keynote address today is going to be given to you by a guy, well, from a label and a brand that's been constant in our business for 23 years throughout this whole story. He's headed it up for the last 15. Please welcome Lohan Presencer. From the Ministry of Sound.
Can you hear me? Good. I remember my first day at a record company. I was 22, fresh out of college, and paid £50 a week. There were 3 of us in a damp, windowless basement in Notting Hill in West London. It was sweltering, even in winter, and my job was to do everything. I thought, fuck me, I've made it. One day, I might even get to choose the records. This is as good as it gets. Little did I know that the industry was about to go through a period of change as seismic as the shift from sheet music to vinyl, and that far from as being as good as it gets, over the next 2 decades, I'd have to fight, adapt, turn myself upside down to survive. Coincidentally, I began my career at the same time as Ministry of Sound opened its doors in September '91, although I'm not sure they would have let me in at the time. I met a lot of people who were there on the opening night, probably about twice as many as the club holds. London had never seen anything like it. It's hard to remember, but back in '91, no UK club had ever been granted a 24-hour license. British nightclubs were about drinking, fighting, and shagging. The CD was still a new format, DJs were the guys spinning the records on the radio, and dance music was just an emergent sound from the underground clubs of New York, Detroit, and Chicago. Even Ibiza was better known as a package holiday resort, save for a few early pioneers. Since then, we've seen clubbing and dance music grow into the fastest changing, most adaptable and exciting genre of popular music worldwide. Electronic music by its very nature is constantly evolving. House and techno to trance to chill out, drum and bass to garage, hard house to dubstep, EDM, and now back to house again, with many other incarnations along the way. Every business book you read talks about change, taking risks, and having the courage and intellectual rigor to work things out. This isn't easy. Once you've got a successful business model, you can get stuck in a rut. This is especially true in creative industries where judgments are subjective. The music business used to be regarded as the sexiest business on earth, but it's become the most stuck, something I had to leave my warm little basement to find out. Over the last 15 years, record industry revenues, profits, and people employed have collapsed. A top-selling album a decade ago would hit at least 10 million copies. Last year's biggest seller, One Direction, sold fewer than 4 million. In the UK, for the first time ever, there wasn't a single million-selling album. I believe that if we had to attribute this collapse to one cause, it would be that of the structure of music industry executive pay and reward. This focuses everyone on their personal short-term desires as opposed to the industry's long-term needs. Over the past decade, everything has become about executives clinging onto their contracts at the same or even greater salary levels, despite the decimation of their industry. It's difficult to name a single visionary from the music business, with the possible exception of Jimmy Iovine, who focused on technology shifts and the long term. Where was our Steve Jobs? And by the way, he was the one who ate our lunch. We at Ministry of Sound didn't have a crystal ball to map out the shifts in music consumption, constantly anticipating the next change. But dance music has perhaps made us more fleet of foot than some of our major label competitors. Dance music is about one-off hits. That's an unpalatable thing to say, but the reality, and frankly the joy of electronic music, is that hits often come from the most unexpected places. Looking back at some of the biggest records that we've had over the years, very few came from artists who had ever released a record prior to that moment, and even few went on to deliver a significant body of work thereafter. We launched our original label back in '93, doing what other dance labels did, releasing one-off tracks from underground DJs and producers. Soon after, we put out our first compilation, Ministry of Sound Sessions, mixed by Tony Humphries. It wasn't the first album released by a club, nor the first dance music compilation, but it paved the way to our future. Having been in the business of running the coolest club in the world, battling drug dealers and South London gangs, the record business was a real eye-opener for Ministry. And our light bulb moment came when we realized that we could be more than a club. Compilations were perfect for clubbers. So much of the music was anonymous. You didn't want to listen to one track at a time or an album from one artist. You wanted to lose yourself in hours of continuous mixed music. The DJs were the conductors, the clubs the trusted brands. The compilation was a journey of discovery. The DJs were ahead of the crowd, often picking future hits way before radio got there. Curation is today's buzzword, but that's what dance compilations have been doing for 2 decades. And compilation sales in the UK are still growing year after year, whilst artist album sales continue to decline. But it's not as simple as just slapping a load of tracks on a CD or a digital bundle. It's not just about recording a DJ in a club. It's not even about building algorithms which predict what listeners want to hear. Without giving away too many secrets, we're constantly developing new compilation ideas. Some can take years whilst we tweak the idea, adjust track lists and running orders, work on design, marketing and creative, and judge the perfect moment to release. Others can be a sprint and take just weeks from conception to release. And that's the joy of our business. We're always looking for new opportunities. We create something from nothing every day. We don't have to sit twiddling our thumbs waiting for our artists to deliver records. Last summer, for example, Fatboy Slim and Reva Starr's Eat, Sleep, Rave, Repeat started to buzz in the clubs. We thought it would make a good banner for the front of our club, so we put one up. 12 hours later, I got a call from Gary Blackburn, Norman's manager, bollocking me and saying we better not be doing a compilation. Great idea. Thanks, Gary. So we did a deal, released an album, and we've now sold 250,000 copies. Something from nothing. In the early days, this fast-moving opportunism made us impatient. We were accused of being short-term, looking for quick return on investment, and expecting artists to jump when we clicked our fingers. We weren't a terribly artist-friendly business. At the same time, we desperately wanted to become a real record company, to prove our artist development credentials. We made some pretty big mistakes, like flying over New York electroclash duo Fisher Spooner on Concorde, paying them $2 million in a bidding war, and then dropping them after their first single failed to reach the top 20. A pretty painful and public humiliation. Over time, however, we learned that artist development and A&R takes time, patience, and real attention to detail. It's also about people, not money. In fact, I can't recall a single big record deal we've done over the years that paid back, and we've done some pretty big deals. The hits were generally the surprises, the ones where the music was great, the artist, A&R, marketing, management, and even lawyers were all on the same page. If you can get a better deal elsewhere, then fine. We're not the ones for you. We want you to work with us because you believe in us just as much as we believe in you, not because we're paying more. Ironically, the stability of our compilation business has taken pressure off the A&R process. As new technology has come along and driven a coach and horses through the record business, the majors have panicked. Increasingly, we see bigger and bigger deals signed with records rushed to market far too quickly. Then artists are dropped and executives fired. They've forgotten that artists need time to discover themselves, their sound and their identity. Labels also need time to work out how to break them. How can you build long-term careers and a sustainable business in this environment? As much as we love having one-off hits, our aspiration was to reinvent ourselves as a label renowned as a haven for great talent. We began this process in 2008 when Dave Dollymore took the reins of the label along with our A&R director, Dipesh Palmer. They pared back our schedule and started to sign artists that they loved and believed in. Example, Wretch 3-2, DJ Fresh, and now London Grammar are fruits of that labour. And in London Grammar, we have our first million-selling album act, and a band who we believe will go on to sell millions more. But it took over 2 years from signing London Grammar to the release of their first single. They wouldn't have had that time at a major. It took us that long to get the music right, to map out the campaign, to find the right international partners, the right live setup, and the right management. To succeed, everything had to be in place. And even then, we needed a healthy dose of luck. Recently, we went far down the line towards signing another band. No other label was in the mix, the music was strong, the band excellent, the lawyer pragmatic, the deal reasonable. Contracts were sent. But they wanted to rush, and we felt they weren't ready. So we walked away. Knowing when to say no is tough. We've also built an experienced team across all our businesses: club, A&R, marketing, compilations, live events, digital media, finance, legal, and operations. We have people who have been with us for years. Skilled people who really understand their jobs, who aren't paid ridiculous over-the-top salaries on short-term contracts, but who are paid fairly and rewarded when we win, who share in our success and feel an ownership and loyalty to the business and to each other. Perhaps this culture has its genesis in our nightclub, a scary, tough, late-night industry where you've got to operate as a team and have each other's backs. Our people also know that if they fail, we won't fire them. In a creative industry like ours, failure is an essential bump on the road on the way to success. If we fire the people who fail, how will we learn not to make the same mistakes again? We've also tried to stay ahead of the game on music consumption. We released our first digital compilation back in 2003. It had 8 tracks, no hits, took 45 minutes to download, and it sold 5 copies. I bought 3 of them. We now sell over 2 million digital bundles a year across 140 markets and through nearly every digital music service. By being there at the beginning, even before Apple started to sell digital music, we were able to experiment, fail, learn, adapt, and eventually succeed. As for the future of music consumption, we will always try to work out what's right for us, not just jump on board when a new model comes along. We need to consider the financial mechanics of any new service and its long-term implications for our business. Streaming is a challenge for compilations. Right now, there's no financial value attached to curation. We're taking our time to work through the problems and have several concepts in development which we believe have the potential to connect with customers on a global level. When we go into any new venture or market, we always ask ourselves, what will give us the right to succeed? We don't just want to be a me too. Our products and businesses need to be differentiated and impeccably executed. If we don't believe that we can achieve that, then we won't launch. We're often asked about our plans for America. People forget that we've tried and failed there several times. Each experience has been painful but valuable. America is a sophisticated and competitive market. Of course, there's opportunity with the growth in EDM, but there's also no point going in with a vanilla version of someone else's idea. We're still working it out. Working it out is a mantra for Ministry of Sound, and something I wouldn't have imagined would be my life's calling in that dingy basement all those years ago. I was looking forward to being that big, fat music industry executive you see in cartoons, sitting behind a huge desk with a massive cigar and a busty secretary. Instead, I've been in the trenches, day in, day out, battling existential questions. How are we going to survive in the digital age? Protect our club from encroaching development. Build a credible artist business long term. Crack America. Keep our quality of execution razor sharp. I look back at the young me and laugh. But here I am, living the dream. Thank you all for listening.